Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Andrew Townsend. I'm with eLearning Brothers. Today, we're going to be talking about Learning DevCamp 2018, the big conference that's coming up this June. This webinar will be recorded. You'll be able to view it on our website in a few days' time. We will also email a recording out to all registrants later today. If you have questions during the webinar, we'll be ready to answer questions in the questions panel, or during the webinar. We'll try to bring those up and make sure that we're as transparent as possible, making sure everybody knows everything that they need to know about Learning DevCamp. So do use that questions panel if you have questions. To talk to us and represent Learning DevCamp, we have Cara North, Instructional Development Specialist at the Ohio State University Center on Education and Training for Employment, and Nic Floro, a Learning Architect, with us today. We're excited to hear what both of them have to say. Just so you know, one of the things we like to do after the webinar is try to follow up as soon as possible. Sometimes it's just to get feedback. Most of the time, we would like to touch base and find out if anyone needs some clarification on webinar topics after the fact. So do use that questions panel. We use that a lot of the time to try to reach out and continue the conversation after the fact. All right, without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn the time over to you, Cara, and I will make you the presenter right now.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, and welcome everybody. And really glad that everybody is here with us today. And I just want to share with you some information about Learning DevCamp. One thing from last year, I was able to pick the conference that I wanted to go to. And obviously, I know there's a lot of choices out there when it comes to picking a good learning development, professional development conference for yourself. And going through thinking about everything, I know that eventually I would love to go to ATD ICE and I'd love to go to DevLearn. Fingers crossed, hopefully this year I'll be able to go. But the timing just wasn't right last year for those particular conferences for me. Specifically, I was looking for a conference during the summer months because in addition to being an instructional designer, I'm also a PhD student here at Ohio State. And so I just wanted to enjoy my summer, get the most out of it. I had the advantage of meeting Debbie Richards and Sam Rogers in April of last year. They came to the Central Ohio ATD. We had a Learning Tech Day here in Columbus. And after meeting them and speaking with them, they actually recommended this particular conference to me. And at the time, I had never been to Salt Lake. And obviously, the pictures looked really beautiful. So I said, why not? Let's give it a whirl. And what I found at this conference, actually, it really has helped develop me and change kind of my trajectory into what I've been doing in learning and development. So I had a lot of magical moments, as I like to call them, at Learning DevCamp last year. And for me, one of the biggest magical moments were just the connections that I made with people. Several of the people that attended this conference and present at it, they are who I call the stars of L&D. And I was a little bit starstruck when I first saw them at the conference. But again, it was just a great opportunity to meet with them, chat with them, and I was just floored on how professional and kind a lot of them were with their time. And I was able to go out to dinner a lot of evenings with them, and I just thought that that was really, really awesome. And the fact that I followed a lot of these people on Twitter for a while and actually being able to make that connection, it was really important to me, and it really made an impact because at my organization, I was the only person that went to this camp last year. And I felt, oh my gosh, I don't know anybody. But as soon as I started to walk up to people and recognize them and talk to them, I did have people there that I knew, just in a different capacity. And that's one of the magical things about conferences in general. But the fact that I was able to get that FaceTime with these folks that I had followed for a long time, it was really, really great. And again, just from those connections, one big thing that happened for me at the camp is I love social media. If you know nothing about me at all, that's one takeaway. I love social media. And somebody at that conference had actually asked me, what are you doing? And I was like, what do you mean, what am I doing? I'm here at this conference. And she said, no, she said, with your social media, what are you doing? Like, why are you not capitalizing on that, helping people? And from that inspiration and that push, I started my consulting business right there in Salt Lake City at Learning DevCamp. And that's what it's all about, being around encouraging professionals and being able to really make those connections. It was really powerful. And that's not all. I'm sure a lot of you might recognize this face here, Ivory Jimenez. And I was extremely starstruck when I saw him. Like many of you, I'm sure you went to his webinars through the Training Mag Network. And it took a lot of courage to actually walk up to him and say, "Hi, I'd like to meet you. My name is Cara." And I think I probably scared him, honestly, because I was able to walk up to him, and I think I kind of overwhelmed him just a little bit, but that's okay. But I share this picture because Ray is such a nice guy, and if you haven't had the opportunity to meet him, I highly, highly recommend meeting him at some point. And I shared with him a little bit about my background, my story, and long story short, he has been a personal mentor of mine ever since Learning DevCamp. He remembered me, and a couple days after the event, he had emailed me to follow up on my PhD studies and what I was interested in. And he's just been a great supporter of my career, and I just can't imagine not having his support at this point. But had I not walked up to him at Learning DevCamp and introduced myself, I probably wouldn't have him in my network. All right, so I've told you about the connections you can get at Learning DevCamp. I want to talk about the environment. It is a smaller, more intimate conference, and I met learning development professionals there. I believe last year there were several from the IRS, Walmart, and even independent consultants. And I know that it was a small conference, but I'll say that the variety of sessions were fantastic. There were many times I had to make a tough decision on which session to attend. And I love the fact that I was able, and I didn't know this at the time, when I went to my second session, I actually ran into somebody that I know, a student here at Ohio State, and she had actually signed up via the conference rate for students. This is one thing that I think Learning DevCamp does a great job of doing. They encourage students in instructional design and learning technologies to get involved in this conference. So she had seen the opportunity. She emailed Jason Bickel and said, "I'm a student. I'd like to apply for the student rate." She got to go to this conference for $99. And I think that that's a huge value for any student because, again, the connections that you can build, the experience of just learning more about different sessions, it was extremely valuable for her. And I know now she's doing a lot of stuff with XAPI based on some connections that she made at that conference. So again, $99 for a student registration, that's an amazing value. And if you know anybody that is a student in these programs, I highly recommend them reach out to Jason Bickel directly, and we'll have his contact information here a little bit later. But what a tremendous value for the money that they get. And another thing is, I don't know about you, but when I go to conferences, I kind of shy away and avoid the vendor room, if you will. But Learning DevCamp does a little bit different. They have swag that you can get through what they call the dream catcher. And the dream catcher essentially is you go in at the end of the day, you put your name in on a spreadsheet, and then you are in the running for a ton of prizes, from Amazon Echo to a green screen to a sweet pair of fuzzy socks. Yes, and a lot of people wanted those fuzzy socks too. I actually walked away with, I think, a phone USB pack, which was a great gift, and I was thrilled to get that. But interestingly enough, that student I just spoke about, she was the one that won the green screen, and she was able to take that home and actually use it in her study. So again, just another great connection that was made at Learning DevCamp. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the actual sessions that you'll see at Learning DevCamp. To me, this is like one of the strengths of the conference in itself. And here's two screenshots of two sessions that I went to. One is on the left, that was from Mary Kropp's session. And in that session, we built interactive video and articulate storyline in 3 different ways. And as a participant of a conference, one thing that I appreciate is getting asset files at various levels. So you'll get an asset file of the full product, you'll get an asset file of the beginning stages, and then you'll get an asset file somewhere in between. And because this is a smaller conference, I commend all of the presenters. They did a fantastic job of keeping up with everybody. So if somebody wanted to take a little extra time or had some trouble finding something, they took time away from the presentation to help those folks. And that doesn't always happen at other conferences that I've attended. And just the value of that, I think, is huge. On the right-hand side, that's a screenshot of Jeff Bott's session on building games and storyline. And again, his strength, and something that we learned a little bit about last year, was integrating in code and JavaScript. And he did a fantastic job explaining that and breaking that down. But again, having the access to this kind of content, and again, I'm going back to the student example. I mean, a lot of these programs, and I can speak from experience, a lot of the instructional design programs focus a lot on the theory and the development, but not necessarily the application piece. So having this kind of information at a conference, I think, is so valuable for anyone. I mean, depending on what level of expertise you have in the application piece of it. And of course, there are in-depth sessions. And one thing I'll commend for last year in particular is I really learned a lot about XAPI at this conference. And that wasn't necessarily something that I went in wanting to learn about, but just the value of the sessions that they had there. Megan Torrance did an excellent job with explaining a little bit more about it, and being able to not only articulate to a peer what XAPI is, but some examples of it and what that actually looks like. I mean, that's extremely valuable, and just being able to be a part of that conversation, I think, is a really great thing to have. One other thing that I appreciated is, I will give props to Sam Rogers, who's actually a keynote this year. He actually had a session about, I believe, different obstacles that instructional designers face, and he just facilitated conversation. And there were a lot of great takeaways from that, kind of comfort and misery, if you will, knowing that other organizations deal with the same issues that I do in my organization. That was pretty powerful, and again, a great connections to make. And of course, we have these collaborative learning experiences, and I know Nick is going to talk a little bit more about these here in just a moment, but this is when we all get together in the same room and just brainstorm what are some obstacles that you have to overcome, and how do you deliver your learning, what are some of the tools that you use. And all of these little boxes here are boxes that people had actually given the answer to in the big group. So they would raise their hand or shout out these individual phrases and tools. And then we collected all of them here. My favorite last year is I learned what shots were, and they weren't what I thought they were. The gentleman, I believe he was from the IRS, he described them as self-help online tutorials. But when he said he loved shots, I totally thought he was talking about something else. All right, that's all that I have for my piece. Are there any questions about anything?
Hey, Cara. Right now, we don't have any questions that aren't going to be answered in a moment by Nick. This has been very great, very informative. It's fun to see pictures of the space and to know, where we're headed in June, what's going to be happening, and what to expect. So this is wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and pass the screen over to Nick. Nick has a great presentation for us to give us more of an idea of the details of Learning DevCamp.
Thanks, guys.
Right.
Great job, Cara.
Thank you, Nick.
All right. So my job is to kind of give you guys some content and to help you understand some of the topics that will be covered at the conference in June. So one of the challenges that we all face being in the e-learning world, whether you're a developer or a designer or you're a project manager, is that often we feel like we're in a box where we might feel trapped or not sure what's going to be happening next. A lot of times we just keep getting thrown deadlines from stakeholders, and like, we need this for tomorrow, we need this for next week, we need this for next month. So one of the great things about attending a conference like this is, because it's smaller, intimate size, is that you make a lot of connections, you learn a lot, and you're able to kind of extend that personal learning network. So in 3 weeks or tomorrow, when you have a question, you're able to reach out and ask that and kind of share it. My job here in the next couple of minutes is kind of show you some of the things that we're going to talk about, and hopefully give you some ideas of how you can explore. I'll also give you some resources that you can look at after the session, or if you watch it later on as well. So one of the big things that we look at is that when we're thinking about starting a project, there are 3 key areas that you really want to focus on. One, of course, is your audience. Often we get asked by a stakeholder to do X or Y, and we're not sure really why we're doing that other than they said it. So by talking to the audience, you can help identify whether it actually makes sense to do that particular ideal or concept, or to build an interactive activity or exercise. We also want to look at the technology that we have. Often we start with the technology and we might feel like we're in that box, or we feel trapped because we can't move left or right. So we look at what the technology is, and based on who the audience is and where they're going to be, we think about an experience that we can create, rather than starting with, I'm going to create a slide deck and have some audio and have the user take a quiz at the end. Think about who the audience is, what the technology components that you have access to, and what would be the best way for your learners to learn about or achieve that particular piece of knowledge. How can you help them in that time of need? How can you help them get past that point and get to that next level? So it's really all about understanding your audience. When we look at content and some of the things that we start to interact with, we may have users, if you're working outside of an organization, or maybe even inside your organization, if you have a lot of remote users today, some may be using their phone, some may be using their tablet, some may be using a laptop that can pull apart into a laptop or into a touch screen or into a tablet, and we have to think about how we can interact with all those kinds of devices. So part of our job as a developer or a designer, or even as a project manager, is to help understand all those technologies. And by attending a conference like Learning DevCamp, you get the opportunity to kind of see what people are doing, kind of refill your creative bucket, and think about how you can apply those different things to projects that you're working on. Some of the things that we deal with every day, and I always look to the conference to kind of get re-energized, is thinking about, what is my current ecosystem? How do my learners connect to my content today, and how do I want to kind of grow that in the next month, 6 months, or a year from now? So by attending a conference like this, you have that opportunity to look at what's possible and what other people are doing, and kind of borrow and learn from what succeeded, what didn't, and what kind of could resonate with your users or your audience that you're working with. So here on our ecosystem map, we see some things like, hey, you'll learn about new ways to work with content. You'll learn about some new Internet of Things using sensors or VR, AR, and mixed reality technologies. So you can kind of get an opportunity to put on an Oculus or one of the other headsets and kind of play around and learn about, if you haven't had the opportunity, of what's possible. We also look at personalization in some of the sessions. Cara mentioned a couple of great ones that Jeff and Megan did. Some of the other ones are around personalization, where you can learn about, instead of forcing your users to take course A or course B, how can I personalize their experience based on what they know? So if I'm really good at subject A, I may be able to skip past that, or my team would know that, so that I can focus on learning about B, C, and D. We want to look at different ways that you can gather feedback, look at different strategies like XAPI and some of the other free open source technologies that we can use for gathering analytics. So we can actually pull data to understand whether our users are using a phone, a tablet, or a computer, or how long are they interacting with our content. We can also look at predictive systems using things like AI or machine learning. How can we start to recommend content? So everyone's shopped on Amazon or a similar service. We can look at how can we use those types of things that we're using every day in our learning, and what are the things that we need to be able to look out for and experiment with. We also look at performance support, informal learning, as well as how you can integrate or build bridges between systems. Just getting over a cough, sorry about that. So the other thing that we want to learn about is, how can we connect the dots? So looking at all these different technologies, how can we pull that together and make it easier for our users and our audience and our stakeholders to be able to pull that together? The other thing we have to be not afraid of is to ask questions. But asking questions, we have to feel comfortable asking questions to our audience, to our stakeholders, and to be able to brainstorm and think about what's possible. And some of the events at the conference, you'll be able to sit in on a campfire like Cara had shared. And the ideal there is that you're able to experiment and think about different techniques to gather feedback, to learn about what other people are doing and how you can apply that again. You also want to be encouraged to test ideas. So how can we test a concept and look at different ways to be able to interact and see what really resonates with our groups. So it's also about gathering feedback, and then ultimately, how can we involve a concept? One of the other challenges that we have today is that in the old days, like last year, our content strategy primarily focused on laptops or desktop computers. And today that world is growing over the last several years, but we have tablets, we have phones, we have those laptops that pull apart into tablets or touch-based devices. So how can you interact and how can you think about different ways to create content in an optimal way that makes it easy to update, easy to work with, and really focus on those different types of devices that are out there. We also have to think about that today we might be holding our device in a portrait mode or a landscape mode. So how can we interact or how can we create content that will be flexible and allow us to interact on those different devices? So a couple of things that I want you to go out and play with if you're going to attend the conference or kind of keep out looking out on social networking to see some of the highlights of it. These are some tools that we use every day, but highly recommend you can play with them and experiment. First one is a free app that you can download for Android as well as iOS. It's called Office Lens. It's actually a free tool from Microsoft, and it works on your phone or your tablet. And what's great about this tool is that it allows you to take a picture. And if you've ever been into a conference or in a brainstorming meeting inside of your organization, a lot of times you don't have the ability to kind of focus your camera exactly straight on to an image. So here we see an example of a whiteboard, and we're able to take some notes. But if you use this app, it will actually allow you to take a picture on an angle, and it will automatically straighten it out for you, as you see in the middle here. And then you're able to save that and share it, whether it's through one of the Microsoft products or to your photo library, or you can just email it. So it's a great way to capture a screen, a slide, or a concept. So here we see a little video playing with some business cards on the table, and you can see that when I move my camera around, it will identify that as a card. When I snap the picture, it will actually make it super straight and nice and angled, so I'm able to go back to that and use it, then I can share it. Another great app to check out is one called Pixomatic. This one's a couple of dollars, and what it allows you to do is take a photograph and then you can isolate. So here you can see my son Dante. He's got a lot of hair, and this is something that you might do in a tool like Photoshop. So this is something you can do on your phone for a couple of dollars. You're able to quickly snap a picture, highlight an area, and then it will go in and isolate it. So you're able to create an alpha channel and isolate a graphic. So if you're building a quick prototype or a concept, you can see how amazing that is in a couple of seconds there with just using your finger on your phone. So really cool and really powerful. One of my favorite apps I highly recommend checking out is an app called Explain Everything. This one is also a couple of dollars. It's available for both iOS and Android, and it lets you do several things very quickly on your phone or your tablet. So using your Apple Pencil or a stylus, and what you're able to do is just start drawing on the screen. You can also launch into a web page or grab a photo or a video. So here you're going to see an example of screen recording using my phone. I'm going to bring up a web browser. You can see you can also bring up a photograph, an audio file, a video file as well. And what I'm going to do is just go to the apple.com website. But what's really cool about this app is that as you're looking at content, you're able to hit that record button down at the bottom there. And I'm actually able to record audio as well as the visual, and I can save that out as an MP4. So I can quickly gather some feedback on a new course that we're developing. You can see you can also spin or adjust that image or graphic, and it's recording in real time. So as you're talking, you're able to capture that ideal, that concept, or that sketch. And here's an example of a sketch, or even highlight, and then you're able to share that. So it's so much more powerful than sending a 3-paragraph email. You're actually able to show someone, hey, here's the error that I'm getting when I launch the course or when I'm interacting with this activity on a certain device. So you can use it for feedback as well as for content generation. So here you see an example of I'm drawing a wireframe where at the top of the screen we have a talking head, we have some bullet points, we've got 3 buttons below, just adding some text at the top. And what this allows me to do is I can be recording audio with that and then share that with you or a stakeholder to help them understand the concept that we're talking about. So that's Explain Everything. It's a couple of dollar app. It's about $5 to about $60 a year, depending on the version that you get and the subscription that you get. But it's a great way to capture, to give feedback, to even create content. So if you're looking for a fresh way to create that whiteboard effect, for a couple of dollars, you're able to create this content on your phone or your tablet and then save it for use in whatever tool you're using to create your e-learning content. Another great app, this one's free to check out, is called Adobe Capture CC, and this one works on iOS and Android. And I learned about this at one of the earlier conferences, and what this allows you to do is point your camera at a visual, whether it's a brochure or a photo, and it will pull the color palette, and you're able to see that up top there on the screen. And what's great about that is if you're not sure, you're not a designer, you're not sure what colors to use, this can help you generate the palette from, in this case, a toy product, where we're able to use that or capture that. So if you're walking down the street, you're at the movies, you're watching something on TV, reading a magazine, any photo that you take, you're able to pull the palette just by using this free app called Adobe Capture, and it will pull the colors. So it's a great way to get inspired and think outside the box for a next project you might be working on. Another great thing you can learn about at the conference is technology like mixed reality, virtual reality, or something as simple as Google Cardboard. If you haven't played with this, this is something that you want to definitely check out. This allows you to go in and using your phone, you slide it into the cardboard device, and you're able then to move left, right, up, or down. There's even a button to be able to trigger a hotspot. So if you're doing some new employee onboarding and you want to be able to allow people to kind of experience what the office looks like before they actually get there, you're able to do that very quickly with a series of images or VRs or panoramics actually, and then pop that into a cardboard VR to allow them to explore or interact with a certain area. Another great tool to check out is called Bubl. It's BUBB.li, and this one allows you to use your phone or your tablet to capture a series of stills and then save that out as a panoramic. The user, your audience, can actually use it within their web browser, or if they have something like Google Cardboard, they're able to slide that image, or you can trigger that through a web page or a learning course and allow them to interact with it. So if you go to their site, you're able to learn more about it, and it's free. So definitely want to check out the conference if you want to learn more about Apple AR as well as Google's AR Core and some of the technologies that are out there. Another big area that I'm really excited to talk about is sketching and wireframing. It's one of the things that I do every day. But if you aren't sketching currently, I strongly recommend grab a pencil and start drawing. It's a great way to communicate and share an idea. So it really helps to paint a picture of what you're thinking. So if you're working with a stakeholder or you're trying to communicate to your team exactly what you're thinking for a new phone or tablet-based course or application, it lets you quickly draw some boxes and shapes and help them to understand it. So here you see some different examples, and again, it's to communicate and to be able to help tell a story. Another area at the conference you'll learn about is, design. What is it and how you can work with it? You might want to level up your skills and become a better designer if you're more on the code side. So design is really all about how it works. We think about it as a way of communicating and problem solving. One of the things that I do every day is using my phone, I'll capture and analyze whatever I see. So if I see a cool ball, I might take a picture of that. If I see a neat business card or a magazine ad or just something at a conference, I'll take a picture of that and use that to inspire me at a later date. So here you see on my desktop, I've got several images of screen grabs or images that I took with my phone, and I'll go to this folder whenever I want to start a new project to kind of brainstorm and think outside the box. Hey, this is something really cool that I saw from a sports commercial, or here's something really cool from a marketing campaign from a group. How can I use that, or what can I apply from what I'm learning or seeing to what I'm working on? So it's a great way to get energized. And I also keep this image on my desk. It's thinking about whenever you're out in the world or you're at a conference or you're, at home watching TV, what are you seeing? What are you actually hearing? How does it make you feel? And what are you actually learning? And just by thinking about that, whether you grab stills of things that you like or see, or you might be working with your group to kind of share and talk about, we meet weekly or twice a month to just share, hey, here's a really cool app that I'm using now to find out about local movies, or here's a great way that you can share and keep up with local news. So whatever you're interested in, you want to apply that to this concept and think about what do you see, hear, feel, and learn, and then you might share that with your team, you might share that with a stakeholder, you might just use that for your own inspiration to kind of think outside the box.
Hey, Nick, we've got a quick question here. Sure. So you've mentioned a ton of cool tools that will help us be prepared for the conference. Are these required? Are these apps that are going to be heavily discussed at the conference, or are these just a wise best practice?
these are just a bunch of tools for you to look at, consider, to experiment with, and some of them are covered at the conference, but it really just trying to give you some knowledge and things to kind of open up your eyes and play. So you want to use it as an opportunity. Hey, I'm looking for a way to get inspired. Hey, I'm looking for a way to capture that board in our conference room. I don't want to run around and get the perfect shot. I can use that free tool to grab it and share it. So these are just
excellent
ideals. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. So a couple other quick ones, and then we'll wrap up. A couple of resources to check out. This is actually one that we built and give away, mobile apps for learning. So if you're looking for some fresh ideas on how can I use my phone or my tablet to be more creative, if you go to mobileappsforlearning.com, you're able to learn about several new apps. Some are free, some are a couple of dollars, but it's a great way to get inspired, to feel pumped up. You might have one that you use every day. We'd love to hear about it. If you want to tweet it out or share it with the eLearning team, eLearning Brothers team, you're able to maybe even speak about it at the upcoming conference, which is really cool. Another one that we have is around prototyping. So if you're interested in how can you learn more about sketching or wireframing or building an interactive prototype, check out prototypingforlearning.com and you can learn more about it. One of the tools that you'll learn about on that site is a free app called marvelapp.com. You can also go to their website and using your computer, you're able to quickly create a prototype on your phone, your tablet, or your computer that you can share with a stakeholder or share with your team. So just another great tool that you can add to your toolbox when you're thinking about or brainstorming your next project. One last tip I want to share is we all have Google Chrome on our computers, whether you're on Mac or Windows. Chrome is a great browser. One of the hidden gems in that tool is under the View menu, you're able to go up to the developer and select developer tools. And this is a great thing to do when your boss walks up behind you. You can just trigger this and it shows up a bunch of code on the screen. So you can just bang on your keyboard, just make sure you unplug it first and look really busy like you're pumping out code. But what this tool allows you to do is by invoking it within Google Chrome, you're able to check responsiveness. So if you don't have a Apple phone or a Samsung phone or one of the other flavors that your users may be using, by going into developer mode, you're able to trigger and pull up different types of phones. And Google updates this browser every 4 to 6 weeks. So the tools change a little bit during those timelines, but it's a great way for free where you can test, what is this course that I'm building going to look like on my phone, on my tablet. The other really cool thing is that if you look under the network tab here, you're able to simulate. You might have a super fast bandwidth at your office or at home, but your salespeople or your learning people out in the field might only have a 3G connection. So you can actually simulate that and kind of test what does that video look like and how long will it take them to be able to see that. So it's a great way to test without having all those other devices. One last tool I want to recommend, which is also free, but a lot of us as stakeholders or project managers often wonder, with a particular audience that we're working with, how do I know what devices they have, or how do I know if they're using the learning that we generate? We all may have an ecosystem or an LMS, but a great way to keep track and look at the bigger picture is using a free tool like Google Analytics. So if you go to analytics.google.com, you're able to go in, plug in a little piece of JavaScript into a particular learning resource that you may have generated. You can plug it into a course that you've created, whether you're using a tool like Storyline or HTML or working with a third party like eLearning Brothers. You're able, and they're probably already doing this for you, plug in this little piece of code, and what it allows you to do is look at the big picture. So I can see on this particular course that over a January to September, a 9-month period back in 2016, we had 66,000 users interact with this particular course. They used that content a little over 200,000 times, and over 500,000, just over 500,000 pages of content were viewed. That's really cool because I can see the average time in the session was just over 3 minutes, and how many users are actually using it. So in your LMS or your ecosystem, you may have a report on finished learning or completed learning or started learning, but you may not have the big picture. So by plugging in a free tool like Google Analytics, you're able to start generating this free data that you can use to help drive your next project or the learning that you're developing or the next version of it. So really quick here, you can see an example where I want to learn more about the technology that's being used. So the top 10 browsers back then in September of 2016, Chrome was number 1, then IE, Firefox, Safari, and so on. So we didn't really have that many mobile users, and we can look at that data also. If you look under mobile on the left-hand tab, we can see that out of those 200,000 users that visited that course over that 9-month period, 98% of them were on the desktop. So even though our stakeholders said we need to make it on a phone, we need to make it on a tablet, you can see that less than 3,100 people used a mobile device. So when you're building that next version or you're adding a new component, you know where to focus in creating your content or where your users are going to be. So that kind of gives you a taste for some of the content, some of the tools that we'll be talking about. Again, it's just an idea to help you play and experiment and kind of see what's out there. Hopefully you're pumped up and you're learning about how you can make a difference. So kind of wind up, I want to go back to talking about Learning DevCamp. It's taking place in June. Jason Bickel is the founder and leader of the conference. He wasn't able to make it today because he's actually in a training session with a class, but he's a great guy. If you have any questions, you're able to reach out to him and ask. Cara mentioned student discounts. If you're a student, you can apply for that and be able to take advantage of that discount as well. It's the 5th anniversary of the event, so it's a great way to learn and connect with your personal learning network and see what's possible. You heard Cara's story earlier. It's also a beautiful environment. It takes place in Salt Lake City on the campus, and it's an amazing area where you can kind of spend an extra day before or after the conference or at the end of the day and kind of look out what's possible. We're really excited this year, and the eLearning team will be talking about this, is that they have a great one-day conference that's going to take place called ELBX. It's a user-focused conference, and the eLearning Brothers team is putting together an amazing assortment of speakers and special guests where you'll be able to take advantage of that either independently or as part of the bigger conference. One of the things that Jason really always pushes speakers to talk about at the event is 30, 60, and 90 days. So it's our job as a speaker and your job as a attendee to think about what can you apply from what you're hearing in the next 30 days. So you might want to check out that one application that we mentioned to be able to take a quick picture. So Office Lens from Microsoft, that's something that's really easy for you to download on your phone, and I can definitely check that off in the next 30 days. In the next 60 days, you might set a goal where you want to experiment with XAPI, or you might want to reach out to the social network to talk about, hey, this is something I'm struggling with, or this is something I really enjoy doing. Does anyone have any feedback, or here's what I'm doing, share your story. And then again, 90 days and so on. So the conference really focuses on what's practical and what you can be able to apply as soon as you get back to your conference. There's some great keynotes that you can learn about on the website. Cara did a great job talking about the Campfire collaborations. This is where everyone that attends the event goes into the big conference room and they brainstorm, they share their point of view, and we document that so you can share that with your team or your organization or your next stakeholder to figure out what's possible or what's needed the next time around. So to learn more, just check out learningdevcamp.com. I'm going to pass it back over to the Andrew and Drew to talk more about their side, and thanks for attending.
I see your screen.
All right. We really want to thank Cara and Nick for sharing what they have about DevCamp. We just give you a little bit of background on ELBX and how it came to be. From the very beginning of eLearning Brothers, we've been a company that has been involved in conferences and trade shows. And as our company has grown, then our involvement in conferences has grown as well. And we had such a good time and a valuable experience at the different conferences that we would attend that for a long time now we've looked forward to be able to have our own. And as we were looking at that possibility, we were lucky enough to have a conference like Learning DevCamp in our backyard here in Utah. And so it made a lot of sense for us to be able to partner with them. And as you can see from what they've shared today, what a valuable conference that is. We are grateful to be able to be a part of that and also to hopefully add some value on that Monday for the first day of the conference. we're still in the process right now of fine-tuning our schedule exactly, but I wanted to show you a little bit of an outline so you can kind of see just the shape of what that day is going to look like. We're going to have a main session starting at 9, so you can get registered starting at 8. From 9 until about noon, we're going to have a number of different presenters. It's going to be a lot of different viewpoints and a lot of different perspectives into the industry, into what it is that our users and other people in the industry who may be joining us for the first time from Learning DevCamp are going to be able to focus on. So we're excited about that morning session, and we're excited to be able to share some details about that. Again, we're confirming some of those right now, so we're holding off on having all the details just yet. But as we move down, you can see in the afternoon, we wanted to be able to kind of break things down and allow people to focus on these 3 different tracks. So we've got the business solutions track, the creative juice track, and the intentional technology track. We feel like these 3 different areas are important to focus on. And we're going to have, as you can see, they start at 1 p.m. and they'll go till about 4:30. So there will be 3 different presentations within each of those tracks. And we're really excited about what our users and the other attendees who may be new to us are going to be able to benefit from that. One thing, if you've encountered us at conferences, you probably know our culture and our brand is important to us. We have a lot of fun, and we're not necessarily the most quiet people at conferences, but we do believe in a level of excellence in the things that we do. And so being able to, if you've gotten a feel for us at conferences, we only want to expand on that at ELBX, and we're excited to have all of the knowledge and the sharing of information in the morning and the afternoon. And then in the evening, we just want to treat you to a good time. We've lined up some excellent entertainment. Those details are forthcoming, but it's going to be a fun night. If you're familiar with the company and the level of fun that we tend to exist at, then I think you can have an idea of what to expect at the conference. And again, we're super excited to be able to do this with Learning DevCamp. And we appreciate just a moment on their webinar to let us kind of give you a sneak peek of what you can expect schedule-wise for that event.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Drew. We're really excited for Learning DevCamp and for ELBX. We're stoked. It's going to be a fun event. So I'm going to put this information up on the screen. There's a countdown there. We're 90 days, 5 hours, 28 minutes, and 30 seconds away from this awesome event, and we want to make sure that everybody that wants to go can go. So reach out to us if you're curious about discounts and other offerings. Let us know if you have questions about the schedule or the area. You can visit learningdevcamp.com or elearningbrothers.com, and you'll find loads of information there. Also, keep up to date by following our different social media channels. Thank you so much, Cara and Nick, for joining us today, and Drew for this valuable information. We'll see you all next time.